communication means, then goodbye. Bye-bye. Right? So
We
how
are
come?
done.
Yeah.
So how come we have so much trouble
Oh,
communicating? Right? It's a big deal. Right?
um,
So this is what I want to say is, where is it important to have effective communication, and why? So we'll go to Colleen first, and then we'll go to Felicia.
well, everywhere, right? So communication is the foundation of all of our relationships. So for me, that can be, for at work with clients. It can be with family members, or just, the person beside in the line with me at the grocery store. Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Felicia?
I agree with both of you and with the definition. And I kind of like to say that communication is nothing else than speaking, listening, hearing, smelling, tasting. I know it sounds weird, but we were born with these five senses. And believe it or not, according to my own experience, all of them are a form of communication, if you ask me.
Oh,
So
we lost
that
Stella
means,
there. Go
what's
ahead.
that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was kind of done, really.
So communication means all those things you said. Yes, it's simply, right? Simply speaking, hearing, listening. Yes, and you added these wonderful words like smelling and seeing, and right, because
And it's
really,
funny. It's funny that you did, because as you said, seeing and smelling.
uh-huh.
Like I smelled, like somebody's perfume or cologne. Like that's absolutely. Yes, it didn't even occur to me, and I love it. It's absolutely
Absolutely. I love that bit. Yes, that's great input. Yes, absolutely. So, as we're talking about where communication is important and why communication is important, then how do we know? And maybe this is the right time to ask you this question. How do we know if we've had a miscommunication? What are some signs that we're looking for that effective communication has not really been there, has not happened? And so as you think about that, I want to go to the comments and say hello to the people. If you are watching us live, we would love for you to communicate with us via chat. Send us a message so we can say your name and say hello. And right now I have Aaron Avila of Stroke TV Media Group. And he's here and he says, awesome energy, girls. Love energy your way. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much. And same to you. And Simone is also here and she says, love this. Yes, communication is a topic that we all can get better. I want to say tools, communication tools, we can get better at that. So what do you think? So my question was, how do you know that we have not been successful in communicating? What are some signs we're looking for? Maybe address that to Felicia first.
Colleen, go ahead.
Oh, well, there
I
you
saw you ready.
So so successful. So when some of the things that you can recognize, and everybody knows these, so chime in the comments. But if there's any,
excuse me, no, we don't know this because otherwise we will not have so many problems in the world.
Well, so knowing doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing something about it.
Thank you.
So
yes, so this disclaimer, knowledge is not power, wisdom is power.
Yeah.
Okay.
So putting the strategies into action, right?
Yeah.
Being very conscious of it. So signs of poor communication. So you don't feel as though you've been heard. And the funny thing is we don't often think of it this way, but if you're feeling frustrated and as though you're not being heard, 99% positive that the other person is feeling the exact same way. Right. So chances are they're equally as frustrated. So that's one of the things. If you feel frustrated, you feel like you're not being heard, that's a sign that your communication is not working. Like you said earlier, if your discussions tend to escalate into arguments, that means that you're having conflict because there's usually a breakdown in communication, a misunderstanding, or a lack of accepting the other person's point of view. So any kind of animosity like that. And if your emotions take over in a conversation or an interaction, then you're no longer even capable of communicating well. So on the flip side of that, I have a note down saying, good communication leaves you with feelings of acceptance and connection with the other person or people. So anything beyond that is a sign of a lack of communication. Felicia, what do you have to add?
I am a very feely, touchy person. So I always like to say that the best way to find something, an answer to something, is asking yourself, how do I feel?
Mm-hmm.
So if you ask yourself how I feel, and you feel, as you said, Colleen, frustrated or anxious or unease, or, I find that a great communication is when you actually feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Feel good about the environment you are in, the way you feel, the way you think, the way you experience that, whatever it's that just happens. So for me, it's the feeling. It's how I always go to, am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling frustrated? Am I feeling irritated? And then I know if it's to do with, I guess, a conversation that I may have had or I'm even about to have, right? Even there, the emotions, the feelings, the thoughts direct how that is going to take place or how that is going to end. And that's, for me, it's feeling, how I feel.
And that's a really good point. What energy are you bringing into the conversation? We're talking about what happens at the end or during, but absolutely, what energy are you bringing in? If you're hesitant or anxious about a conversation, you're going to bring that energy in, and it's going to hinder your ability for sure. Yeah.
This is like prevention better than cure. Right? Because if you're conscious about the energy you're bringing into the communication, I bet you chances are it's going to go better than expected. And so I do agree that there's a lot of power in that. Some people are saying hello. I just want to make sure that we read their names. Facebook user, I think that's your niece, because she says hello, Auntie Con. What's her name? Because it's
Caitlin.
Caitlin. By the way, if you don't allow Facebook to display your name, then we won't see. It's StreamYard to display your name. Then we won't see your name, but we'll still see your comment. Clayton is here, and he says hello. And Simone says communication is definitely important in every relationship. Yes, it's one of the most important tools. And so this is really probably a good time to say this. As kids, when we were growing up, there was no communication strategies given in school. And so because I mean, our parents didn't get that either. Right. They were never taught. And so in return, we were never taught. But there's so much that just teaching kids how to communicate effectively, so that instead of arguments, they will have discussions, and instead of fighting, they will have dialogues. It's so important to do that, to bring that into the school system. So I don't know if someone's listening to this and you have a hand in what's being taught at school. I do hope you take this as a sign, not that you don't know. Seriously. And Frida's here, my mama, and she's always here, and she's sending us heart. And Hamid's also here, and he says hello. Okay, so anything else you wanted to add? Shall we move on to the?
Because your mama is here. I just wanted to say we miss your mama food.
I have two questions to ask when it comes to communication that we must, or that I ask myself, that I'd like to share, if that's okay.
Of course.
So the first question and this used to be a problem for me, not so much anymore, but is it more important for me to be right or for me to feel connected with that other person?
That's a very good
question. Because I think that's a big one for a lot of us, right? We're so set on being right that we forget about that connection. So that's one of the first questions I ask myself, and it gets less and less, but is it more important to be right or to be connected?
Oh, that's such a good question. That honestly, let's start asking ourselves that before we go into a communication with someone, into like even starting out a conversation.
Yeah.
Because okay, so let me tell you this. If you're going into into a situation where like you're starting to talk to someone, and if you're going with that mindset of I have to be right, then that's going to end up in an argument.
Yep.
But it's like what Paula says, it's the energy you take with you, right? But if you want to connect with that person, there's no way that's going to be anything other than a dialogue or a conversation. Right. Okay, yeah. Sorry. Just wanted to put in my 2 cents.
And then this is just a general one, just to thought provoking more than anything, is do you think it's possible? And I know what you guys are going to answer, but I'd like your opinion anyway. Do you think it's possible to disagree with someone and still show them love and respect?
No.
Oh, you're a smart aleck.
No way. Ask everybody out there.
Okay. So are you honestly saying that you don't think it's possible?
No, I'm kidding. Obviously.
Okay.
That's what I would, yeah.
You were throwing me off.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on that statement or on that question?
Okay. Felicia.
Well, I'm going to turn it around and say this. Do you think you can get a lot more with honey or with vinegar?
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that question.
No, I'm going to go back a bit and explain something because it just came to mind as Colleen was talking. So
sure.
I was told a while back when I have 3 girls, as you guys know, and one of them is a bit older, and I've gone through teenage years with her a few years back. So at one point I was having a very difficult and challenging time communicating effectively with her. And a friend of mine said that I will get a lot more with honey than with vinegar. So when that comment came to me, I was like, huh? Like, imagine you are you having an argument with your teenager who thinks that she knows the world, and you just, you don't know anything. Okay?
And you're out to get them.
And then your friend is telling you, well, try honey, not vinegar. I'm like, so back then, I didn't really realize the true meaning of this, okay? Until I started learning how to deal with her, how to manage her, how to communicate with her. So now having gone through with that with my first, I'm now going with the second daughter. She's going through teenage years now. I realized that unless I change how I approach them, especially the words I choose in my communicating with them, I'm really going to lose them. And I'm going to lose them to their friends. They will no longer come to mom to talk about things, right? They will just look up to their friends for answers, and we will become estranged, and we will live in the same household, but we will not know one another.
Yeah.
So I looked up, and you guys know, and I think most people that listen to our show know by now that I'm a Christian. So the first book I look to is the Bible. And I was curious back then to see, what does the Bible say about relationship? And what this book that I love the most really talks about, it says that in a relationship, in other words, really speaking, period, right? Because the truth is, a relationship must be in place in order to speak and listen, aka communicate, right? We all know that we are born with 2 ears and 1 mouth. Must I say more?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say.
The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, please open up your ears.
Yes.
And listen to your spouses, to your friends, to your children, to your coworkers, to your parents. And open up your eyes on how they're speaking, not what they're speaking. So the Bible teaches us that gentle words bring life and health. A deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. It also says that a gentle answer turns away wrath, but hard words stir up anger. Have you guys experienced that? Because I have.
All the time.
Once I became humble, and I've not talked, but rather listened to my daughters, we'll no longer have the discrepancy in our communication and misunderstandings. So I came up with 3 basic steps, and I would like to share them with you that helped me. So what helped me first was becoming aware of myself, of my feelings, of my emotion. So I realized that knowing myself first, it's the first step in an effective communication with my daughters, okay? The second one was to really learn how to listen actively. And when I say that, I'm referring to listening to understanding rather than replying or proving anything. As Colleen said, who cares who is right and wrong? Because the truth comes to the surface is 2 wrongs will never make a right. And the third was really talking. And Della, you talked about on this with the fact that back in the days, how we were raised and how our parents were raised and how parents' parents were raised. And the 2 of us come from Europe, so we have probably a completely different approach than North Americans have with their children and the way they communicate. Back then, growing up in Romania, I didn't have a say. So my parents would just tell me what they wanted to tell me, and that was it. So talking is not really telling what to do and how to do. It's about asking the right questions in order to understand the person in front of you. So for me personally, this was the hardest pill to swallow, going through with my first 2 teenagers and now with the second. But it has helped me tremendously with literally asking, and using such statements as, I noticed that you said that, or I feel that this is what you're saying. So going back and forth. So I hope that makes sense.
It does.
It
I
really
love
does.
it.
And it's funny because you already started on my steps later on. So thank you.
And I was going to say, yes, there's still steps and strategies, more steps and strategies to come. But thanks for starting us off on that. Hamid is one other person who actually has 2 teenage daughters, twins, actually. And so he sent us a jar of honey when you asked the question, honey or vinegar, because I think he knows. He knows it takes honey to talk to teenagers. And Deborah also is here. The other half of Stroke TV Media Group is here.
Oh,
Howdy. She says, howdy, beautiful ladies. Great information. Howdy, Deborah. Nice to have you here. Okay, so do you want to continue on the strategies, Colleen, right now, or should we move on to another question and then go to the strategies later on?
Did you have another question? Or
I do.
Okay, go for it.
Well, because, once we notice that a communication has gone bad, totally not the way we were expecting it to go, then we can look back and say, oh, what could I have done differently? So
funny enough, I know that Felicia has some steps for that. And I think that maybe my strategies of looking at it would help to be first, and then Felicia's steps of how to rectify it.
Okay.
Would that be okay? Does that sound okay?
You got yourself a plan. Let's go.
Okay. So I've got 2 sets of strategies. One is when you're looking back at a conversation. So if you were to think about a situation, and I'm guessing that all of us can find at least one in the last, few weeks or months or whatever it may be.
Yeah, not me.
Everything goes perfectly, right?
Yes.
So think back to a situation and maybe apply this strategy towards that situation if you'd like, and maybe take a few notes as to what you want to do. So when there's a set of 6 questions or 6 items that I want you to think about what words were said, and what potential feelings by everyone involved. And I say potential because when we're talking about, or we're thinking about what the other person was feeling, we're kind of guessing at that. But if you put yourself in their shoes, well, how could they possibly, what could have they been going through when the situation occurred? So these steps. So step number one, or question you ask yourself, number one is, what was happening immediately before the communication went off the rails? Right?
Yes.
So if
It's
you
like
think about
rewinding that tape and
Right.
watching a movie. Yeah.
So if you're thinking about that conversation that didn't go so well, there was a point where you went, oh, well, this, like something went off, right? What happened immediately before that? How were people feeling? And what were the words that were expressed?
Mhm.
Okay. So then the second step would be to think about, how did you actually respond in the moment? Right? Again, what did you say? What did you do? What was your body language? Right? Did your back get up? Did you, or did you know what I mean? Or did you cower? What happened in that moment? How did you actually respond in the moment? And then, this is my favorite one. How did that work for you? What was the outcome? So step number 3, the question number 3 you ask yourself is, what was the result of that response? Okay. So you're imagining that situation. And so what actually happened when you did your response? Say you yelled, say you cried. What was the response that you got from that? Number 4 is how did that work for you? Number 5 is, what could you have done or said differently? And this is just bringing out the genius in you, right? What could you have done or said differently that might have had a different response? And this is you go in internally and you think to yourself, what could I have said? What could I have done that was different than what I actually did? And then kind of see, and then you try it out. So the last step is, what commitment are you willing to make going forward when you meet up with this person again, or these group of people, or in that situation, right? It could be a situation, it could be a conversation, or so for me, one of the things that triggers me, and I call these triggers, is if somebody criticizes me, sometimes I jump to the conclusion that they're telling me I'm stupid. You know what I mean? That while they might be coming from a place of being helpful, my immediate thought is, now they're judging me. Now they're, you know what I mean? And my back can go up. So what do I want to do differently is that for me, that step would include recognizing that this is about me, not about them, and maybe taking a look at what their actual intent was. So
that's very mature.
So before I go back to you guys and ask you for any comments about any experiences that this might have brought up in your mind, is the last thing is to journal these things, these 6 items that I just went through. And the reason why I think this is critical is when I'm coaching clients and I ask them to journal, and then I meet them the following week and they said, oh, well, I didn't journal it because I figured I'd remember. Not any person has ever remembered the answers to all of those questions. Mm-hmm. So journaling it when it's fresh in your mind, as soon as you can, when it's private and appropriate, just jot down the answers to those questions, so that you can really look at it and see what happened and then you can kind of look at it and what you could do differently. You can wait and do that when you're feeling a little bit more calm. Or so when I went through those steps and I asked you to remember that situation, did you guys have an interaction that came to mind?
I could think of a couple.
Okay.
So when you went, okay. So yeah. when I went through the 6 different questions, mm-hmm. were you able to get back in that moment to some degree?
Yes.
So would you like to share any?
I can. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be specifics, just like, was it helpful or?
Very helpful.
I'd love to hear you.
Hamid says 1,000 1,000. Yeah. This is what I want to say. It's like, I mean, any experience is a great opportunity to learn, and we use these opportunities to learn. Also, so there's no such thing as, oh, I made a horrible mistake. It's okay. So the way you put it, Colleen, is okay. Let's take this opportunity as a learning experience, and go back and see how I can benefit from it, how I can learn from it, so that I don't make the same mistake the next time. And I did go through this. So for me, it's I'm in retail, and sometimes I deal with some customers that and sometimes miscommunications happen. And I want to say, in the past I may have said, well, it's not my fault. But the truth is, I'm only responsible for my actions and the words that come out of my mouth, and the thoughts that I think, right? There's nothing I can do about the other person. So this strategy could save me a lot of heartaches. For sure, right? And so I have, I have since grown, and and I don't have a lot of miscommunications with customers, because I do take my time, and I follow those steps that Felicia mentioned earlier. And so, but I can imagine, this one particular occasion when this customer called, and she was really mad at me for something that I thought absolutely is not my responsibility. I thought, no, you're not putting that on me. That's your responsibility. And of course, she wanted to be right, and I wanted to be right. It was disaster, right? And so now I look back, and oh yeah, so what was happening before that conversation started? I was already on my guard, right? Because I had an expectation that was going to happen, and then what was said, and what was happening in me, and what was I reacting to, and how I was reacting. And now I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that could have gone totally different. I mean, it could have had a total different outcome. And even though later I rectified the situation by whatever, compensating, that still did not heal that miscommunication and the hurts that had been caused. So definitely I want to avoid that by using these strategies. Very, very, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's Felicia, I'll let you go, and then you triggered a story in me that go ahead.
By all means, if you have a story, bring it up.
It's funny because I used to work in the bank. When you mentioned the retail, I was like, oh, you just reminded me of a whole thing. And I used to be a manager of the tellers at the bank. And one of the things that I hope that I conveyed to them is that, you know what, no one's perfect. You're going to say things that are not necessarily perfect, but it's about trying new things. And so when you're doing those steps, what could I have done differently? Try it out, see how it works. And I had an example of, at the bank. So imagine, I'm a bank teller, and this is not a true story. This is just an example. And I've kind of given a strong example so that you can see the difference, right? So my first reaction could have been, right, I look at somebody's bank account and I see that they're paying too much in service fees. Well, my first reaction that would maybe not be so successful is, wow, are you an idiot? Or why are you paying so much service fees? Right? So that's me, not really me, but this is an example where, I would get a bad reaction, right? Like, how would you react if somebody said that to you? Your back would go up, right? You just it would really trigger something in you. So if I wanted to try something, something different, something a little bit milder, I might say something like, whoa, you're paying way too much in service fees. While that's better than, maybe challenging them, it's still making them feel bad.
Yes.
Right? So when you do the trial and error, you might ultimately get to something like, oh, I noticed that you're paying more service fees than you need to. would you be interested in hearing some strategies or some ideas of how you can pay less?
Yes, please.
Right? Like, you're going to get a better response because of the way you communicated the same information.
Yeah.
So that just, your retail story just triggered that
Absolutely,
memory.
absolutely. It's all in the way you communicate. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, Felicia.
So isn't it though so amazing listening to you guys? Brought me back to this feeling of an understanding that words have energy and power.
Mhm.
And they have the ability to either heal you, comfort you, or hurt you, harm you, humiliate you, or or the other way, make you humble.
Mhm.
Now, what's fascinating to me is that in all of those circumstances, all of those feelings mentioned, the choice is ours. We make it ourselves. So yeah, that's thanks for sharing, ladies.
It's so true, right?
So going back, because you guys talk about stories, and going back to my learning from my own daughters, I've learned that the easiest way to communicate effectively and be there for someone is to really first establishing a trust with them. And the easiest way, according to me, I don't even know if this is true actually, I haven't done a research on it, but this is my experience. So what do you guys think is the easiest way to establish trust with someone? Be that someone that you know or someone that you just met.
To establish trust with someone, I would say, I mean, obviously, being honest is the first. To me, being honest would be one of the ways, and trusting them first will, I think, would establish trust. Is that a right answer?
Just remember, there is no right, no wrong.
Right or wrong.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm
Right.
Okay, you passed the exam. What about you, Colleen? What do you think?
So when you mentioned that, my first thought was establishing trust. Like, you don't always have a whole lot of time, because I was thinking about the stranger in the grocery store, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my idea of how to establish trust quickly is eye contact and a smile.
That's it. That's exactly.
I'm really good at that.
Yeah.
Really, the easiest way is by maintaining an eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have you experienced?
The smile is to put them at ease, right? Like, I'm not a threat. I'm friendly.
Well, it softens the atmosphere, no matter where you are and no matter how mad. If you get really, really mad, if you can get to the level of which you're gonna smile with no reason, I guarantee you, 99.9% of the time, by just smiling for no reason, your state changes like that. It's just incredible how that works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying that creates trust?
Absolutely. The fastest way to accomplish, that and establish trust, it's through eye contact. Have you ever met anyone who talked to you but could not look at you straight into your eyes?
Oh, yes, of course.
How did that make you feel?
I call those the creepy people.
No. Okay, so I don't see it like that. I don't see.
You don't?
No, I don't see it as them being creepy. Okay, I'll explain to you why. Because I have met a lot of people with mental illnesses, and they're not able to. Yeah, they're not able to. I want to say this because, I mean, it just happens that we weren't supposed to talk about this. So this is what I want to say. It's, it's a very delicate subject, right? So that's why I don't want to just use that as a general rule. So there must be other ways to kind of.
Totally. And there is another way, actually, you brought that up. there is another way, and that's very simple. And most of us do it without realizing it, and then we really, really impede upon the ability to actually communicate and maintain a proper, not trust. I can't even find the word when we talk to someone, or be that someone that we work with, or someone that we just meet, or someone that we love and care for in our family. So, that brings me to this next one, that it's really never assume anything.
Yeah.
Never assume anything.
Yeah.
So that's why when I asked that question, I realized that there will be people that will not, but that wasn't the question. The question to you was, have you ever talked to anyone who has not looked you in the eye? And how does that make you feel, without knowing that they may have maybe a challenge and there is a valid reason for them not looking into your eye? I'm talking about on a day-to-day basis. If you meet someone, or even, for example, your spouse or your friends, has it happened with those people that you trust, that that don't have any challenges, or in this case, mental illness is a complete different, we put it on the side for now, different thing to discuss. Like we don't even want to go there.
Can I redeem myself with a more accurate answer to that question?
Sure.
Before I was trying to be funny, but it has happened. But in general, if somebody's not making eye contact with me, I feel unnerved, right? So I feel like I need more information. And so, yes, I agree with you, Della, that sometimes they don't have control over whether or not they're making eye contact, but it makes me feel uncomfortable until I figure that out.
Yes.
There's a level, not uncomfortable, like I'm going to walk away, but it like puts me on an alert saying, okay, you need more information.
So on that subject, first of all, Hamid says, it makes me feel like they're lying if they're not looking.
Yeah, you can trust them. It's almost like there is something there.
Yeah. So what I want to say is that, so when someone's talking to me and they're not looking into my eyes as they talk to me, I kind of understand it. It doesn't bother me that much. But when I'm talking to someone and I'm looking at them and they're looking somewhere else, that's when it triggers me. And that's when I feel like I'm not being heard and I'm not being respected. And it's almost like I'm being ignored. That's my trigger. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Everyone is different.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I understand that one as well.
And I want to bring your attention to the time. We have about less than 20 minutes. And I know we still have a lot to cover. So where are we?
So I think that Felicia had what to do if something didn't go well. And then I also have some strategies of in the moment when you realize, whoops, I just said something, or something was said that shifted this conversation.
Okay, so which one do you want to tackle first?
Felicia, did you want to go ahead, or would you like to?
Sure, I can. It's very short and sweet. We've already covered most of it, actually.
Okay.
So it dawned on to me as I worked on this, this topic of ours. It's such an amazing, I got fascinated by the topic. And as I dove into thinking and, strategizing my mind of what do I want to talk about tonight? And I could talk about for hours, like I'm talking hours.
Yeah, we said more than one show is necessary for this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I find that it's extremely important to understand what to do after you had a bad argument or you had a disagreement. So it goes back to what I said earlier. The first thing that it helped me, it's processing my own feelings first. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second, it's remembering that there is such thing as timing, good timing and bad timing. Third, it's to start with the statements. When you start your conversation with that person you had an argument with or a disagreement, maybe learn to explain yourself and use statements such as, I felt like that, or I understood that. That has helped me. And 4, because I said that, I don't know if I told you how many I have, like about 6, I think, or 7. So stop me if I, pass the time.
Okay. We're going through them.
I find that, and we covered this topic a while back, I found that setting clear boundaries with yourself first, and then with whatever the relationship is, it's also extremely important. And next, which is number five, I think, is a five, it's compromising. I find that compromising is necessary sometimes, especially if you want to reach a resolution in order to achieve whatever goal or objective you have. And last one that I found that worked really, really good for me, and I think, again, because I'm such a feely, touchy person, and sometimes as passionate about life and as loving and caring as I am, I could get extremely shaken the wrong way, and I become very, sometimes maybe impulsive. I've learned to ponder and not react and overreact. However, what I find that it's useful for me is to write notes, leave a note somewhere, and write a note about how I feel, how I felt then. And of course, I humble myself, and I come to a point where I say, I'm really sorry if I think I've done something wrong. And to tell you the truth, I find that even if you don't think you've done something wrong, by simply saying you are sorry about something you don't even know what you've done, it kind of helps the other person, lowers their veil, their protective wall, so you can access and are able to connect a different level. So those are the few steps that I thought of, or I thought of.
Again, it comes back to what Colleen said earlier. Do you want to be right, or do you want to feel connected? And I think sometimes just swallowing our pride and saying, well, I'm sorry if I made you feel this way, or if I said something that made you feel this way. I think we can, you're right, this is a big step. And a lot of us don't want to go there.
Yeah.
We don't, because we're too proud.
And some people cannot say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One of my daughters had for the longest time, for years, she could not come down to say, I'm sorry. It was very, very hard. So,
wow.
So
growth.
I'm going to repeat a lot of the words that you said. And I think that that's actually great, because we're just reinforcing the same ideas. So, forgive me.
Yeah.
So
you're going to give us, sorry, Colleen, you're giving us strategies for what to do in the moment?
In the moment.
Yes.
And so it was funny, because I wrote them out and I've divided them into 10 steps. But the reality is the first 5 are done in 3 seconds.
Okay.
So the first one is stop, right? So when you the moment you recognize that something's going awry, just stop. And it's never too late to stop. Even if you've left the conversation, it's not too late, because if you're still in that emotion, right? Yes. So that's step 2, take a deep breath. So again, these first 5 ones are basically the 3 seconds long. So stop is number 1. Number 2 is take a deep breath. You want to just kind of give yourself that pause, allow your emotions to dissipate, and consciously let go of that. Number 3 is understand why you want to have good communication. So whether it's someone you love, someone you're collaborating with, or simply sharing the space with, like the person in the grocery store, is what is your common ground? Yes?
Of course, I want to have a best communication. I want to be right all the time.
Being right is not good communication.
Not true.
But so what is the benefit of having good communication, whether it's, reaching a goal together, or whether it's just sharing your ideas? So what is the common ground? What is the common goal that you may have in that communication, in that interaction? So number 4, and you mentioned this, is humility is very important in diffusing a volatile situation. So take ownership of your part. And we all, regardless of how things went awry, we all have a part in it. And this is where it's important to be genuine. Like you mentioned saying sorry. I don't believe in saying sorry unless you mean it. So find something in the situation that you might be sorry for, right? Like, I'm sorry I overreacted, because I'm so, like, it might be something that has nothing to do with, but take ownership in your part of that escalation in that moment. Number 5 is
What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do I mean?
So, sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
No, it's good.
So you said say sorry only if you mean it. I mean, if I don't feel like I'm sorry, I will not say it. So what do you mean by in that situation saying sorry for, like, you mean like by saying I am sorry for I've done this or I said that or I made you feel that way or how, what do you
Exactly. It's just earlier when you were talking about your steps, you said say sorry. Like this, that's one of the steps is say sorry. And I think that saying sorry has to be genuine. That's all. That's the only distinction that I'm adding to what you said. I agree with you 100%. And I just wanted to add that it has to be
think
genuine.
the difference is, well, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Because it's about the intention that you have.
Or
So-
saying sorry, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? Like that's not saying sorry.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's, you know what, that ties into, I'm not sure which one of you said it, but earlier we talked about the body language, but I now add to that body language the tone of voice.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, 93% of communication is not the words you're saying, right?
No, absolutely. You're
Yeah.
right.
So,
Yes.
yeah, all those things.
Yeah.
So number 5 is see the other persons or the other participants, whether it's one or multiple, see their humanity. Recognize that everybody is there. They want to be heard, they want to be accepted, and they want to feel that connection. They want to be respected, right? So just take that half a second and go, oh yeah, this is a person I'm talking to. It's not, you know what I mean? So and just accept that that's, and you said it earlier, Della, right? Like that's one of the number one things is having that humanity, being two people having a conversation, and it's not about an argument. It's about making that person feel safe and accepted, respected, and heard.
Well, that, oh, are you done? I have something to say.
I have, so now I have the steps of what to do. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Oh no, just kind of, that made me think about Mother Teresa say, and kind of ties in with what we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So she said that we think that sometimes poverty is only being hungry, naked, and homeless. The poverty of being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for is actually the greatest poverty.
Mm.
So
I love that, Mother.
because of what we're discussing, if we don't really listen to understand the person that we are with or the person that's beside us, the question comes, how do you think that person beside you feels?
Yeah.
If you don't really listen to understand them, they're sharing something with you and you just,
I think we can all put ourselves, we've all been in that situation, right? We can imagine when somebody wasn't listening to us, how that made us feel.
Yucky.
Like it can make you feel this tiny.
Yes,
right?
it's true.
Like you're insignificant to them.
Yeah. And that's the golden rule of communication, isn't it, Colleen? What you just said, right? But so I think it fits here, right? The golden rule of communication. It's like the golden rule, do unto others what you want done unto you. And same thing goes for communication. You want to feel safe, respected, heard, understood, and all those good things. But realize that other person also needs all of those things.
The same, yeah. So this brings me to these 5 universal truths of human interactions.
Oh, can I finish my steps and then we can go into that?
Sure.
See,
I'm just thinking for the viewers. If they're taking notes, they need to, what's that?
This is good communication example.
Yeah, it's just if the viewers are taking notes and then you're giving the 5 steps and I haven't finished mine. So if it's okay with you, if we could.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll try to be quick for you.
Okay. Honey, what's that face you sent us? Are you mad?
Take your time. Who is there?
He sent us a mad face. Is that a mad face? Or is that a sad face? Or what kind of face is that? Okay, go ahead, Colleen.
Okay, so number 6 is the response. So your response in the moment, right? So you've already done those first steps. You stopped, you took a breath, you're understanding why you want to have good communication. You're being, thinking about taking ownership of your part, showing humility and seeing the other person's humanity. 5 steps, 3 seconds. Number 6 is the response. So I have a formula for the response. So A, notice in a kind way, just for to add that, what is happening to you or in this situation. So using a very humble terminology, and I'll give an example at the end. So number 1 is notice in a kind way what is happening to yourself or in the situation. B, state why effective communication is important to you. And I've got a very general example, but you can put it into what your specific situation. So, and C, the last part of the response is ask if it's okay to start fresh. If they refuse, express your why again, and we can go into that. So the example that I have is very general, but the notice, the why, and then ask is, I can see that I am not expressing myself well, and it's important to me that we both feel heard. Would it be okay if we regroup and restart?
That's good.
Right. And Felicia, earlier, your response, you were talking about that, is you started with, I noticed. I almost had a giggle because you basically said almost exactly the same thing for a different situation. Is you recognized what was happening in a non-judgmental way, right? You're just noticing a fact. This isn't going well, right? And this is where you can take ownership. I noticed that I'm not getting my point across. So it's about you or the situation. You don't want to say, I notice because then that's
you're not listening to me.
Yeah. That's a judgment. You always want to acknowledge either yourself or the situation. Okay. So that's number 6 is the response. Number 7 is, in a curious, non-judgmental way, explain your understanding of what they are trying to say. So be very open to the possibility that you may have misunderstood. And this is not about agreeing or disagreeing with someone. It's about clarifying or understanding where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So so if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is, and without judgment, you're just stating your understanding of their point of view.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So allow them to clarify their position. That's number 8, if necessary. Like they might say, yep, you got it. Or they might say, no, you got it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So allow them time to clarify. Number 9, if you disagree with their viewpoint, then I've got another set of 3 things that take into consideration when you're trying to get them interested or ask them if they're interested in hearing your perspective. So acknowledge their position is A. B is state that you have a different opinion. C is ask them if they would be interested in you sharing your perspective. So rather than trying to impose your perspective on them, ask them,
let me tell you what.
Yeah, let me tell you. Ask them if they would be interested in hearing your perspective. Mm-hmm. And that sounds like, I hear you. Thank you for sharing your perspective. I actually have a different way of seeing things. Would it be okay if I share with you my thoughts about this? And guess
what? I always see things different than you do.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in what you think about it.
I would avoid the word always or never or
yeah.
But
so what happens if they say no?
You and I often have different perspectives, and yet we're amazingly good friends, right? Like that doesn't mean that we can't be friends. It actually, I think it enhances a relationship because I get to hear a perspective that is not mine. It gives me a new way of seeing things.
No. You know what the best thing about it is? We are both being challenged to come out of our comfort zone.
I love this. Anyway. I love this.
So, okay. So there's just one more in the text.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so just to continue on number 9 is if you say, is it okay if I share my opinion or my perspective? And they say no, that's cool. Because they already know that you don't necessarily have the same, that you do not have the same perspective, and they're not interested or ready to hear your perspective, and that's okay. So number 10 is the journal. So that, you know, the those 6 things that we went through before. So journal. What happened before the trigger? What did you do? What went well? What could have gone better? Like all of those things you want to record so that you can, like you said, it's a learning opportunity. Next time you can do it even better.
Mm.
And I'm sorry I went up to the 59-minute mark. So Felicia,
You
That's
know,
okay. This
the
is good
truth-
conversation.
the truth is this: if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it. And sometimes I remember back in quite a few years ago when I looked into effective ways of communicating, not just with my children, but also with others, and believing that somehow the reason for my misunderstanding or miscommunicating had to do with speaking or being or having English as a second language. And the truth was, it had nothing to do with the English as a second language. It had to do with my approach and my understanding of myself first, and that desire to learn and take my time to do exactly what Colleen was going through that list. It's almost like you lost me there, because it's so much that you have to do, so much that you have to practice, so much that you have to become aware of. It's like, I'm done with this. It's too much work. Like, why can't it be just easy, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not easy, and it's not easy to have it's not easy to have a proper, effective communication with anybody unless you work at it. And that brings me back.
I have a question for you. Is it easy to live with conflict all the time?
You know, for some people it is, because that's what they know. So they think that there's nothing else that they can do. This is how it is. What's your problem?
I agree with you, and it does. That's not my. I'm not sure that you're answering my specific question.
Oh, okay.
So ladies, can I just bring upon you that there's like a time limit, like we are at 1 hour. So we really need to finish this program. But what I wanted to say is this: if someone is feeling uncomfortable where they are with their communication skill, this program, you know, really, we're just talking about enhancing your communication tools. So if that's you, then just practice 1 or 2 of these strategies, right? It's not about being perfect, right? It's not about changing things overnight. I'm 49. I'm 49. And it took me all these years, right, to where I am today. If I want to change something, it's not going to happen overnight. It has to be a process. And I think if it's just 1 strategy or 2 of everything we've heard tonight, if we can just start implementing those, we're still ahead of the game. No?
So, yes. And I have coached people, and they have found progress in less than a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like just by thinking about having a different perspective and being open to looking at it a different way has improved their communication, whether it's with their kids, with their coworkers. So, and when I do coaching for this, we actually will do practice. We'll do role playing, and we'll say, okay, so what happened? And we be each other or whatever. We be the 2 people in the communication. And then we go through those 6 steps. So what could you have done differently? How were you feeling in the moment? We go through all of that, and we practice. And I find that it sounds silly, but when you practice it, it allows you to have a response, a quick response, right? You're not necessarily, having to walk away from a conversation to come back to it when you're more calm. If you have a quick response going, okay, so I noticed, right? You have it in your mind. I'm going to start with, I noticed. And then I'm going to say, what's important to me? and would it be okay if? You know what I mean? Like you have those three. I'm going to have 3 sentences. I noticed. It's important to me. Would it be okay if?
Okay.
And
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm really sorry. We're going to have to end this program because we're already over the hour time. We are going to come back with another show and continue on communications. Sorry we couldn't finish what you had, Felicia.
It's okay.
And I'm sure we have a lot to work with just with what we covered tonight. So, okay, so ladies and gentlemen who joined us tonight and watched us tonight, I hope you took some valuable, not advice, tools. Tools are better. And I hope that you work with them and use them in your daily lives as each single one of us do. And just know that we're not looking for perfection, right? We're not ever gonna be perfect. It's just about progress. And so, again, one more time, the golden rule of communication is
Do unto others.
What's that, Felicia?
Do unto others what you like to be done to you. So,
Right.
in other words, remember the key in everything is respecting each other.
Yes.
And rather than telling somebody anything, ask questions to clarify. Ta-da.
Ta-da.
And this is the butterfly effect, bringing you love,
hope,
and compassion.
Our next show is September 16th, 9 p.m. I hope you join us then. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Until next time.
Bye.